Princess Alenda of Alsaraf stood before her father's throne with her hands folded and her heart cold. The throne room of Seraphis Prime stretched around her like a cathedral of light. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling that showed the stars themselves. Floating gardens drifted past the windows. It was beautiful. It was her cage. "A human," she said. Her voice did not shake. She would not allow it to shake. Emperor Kale IX looked down at his third daughter with eyes that held no warmth. A necessary alliance. The humans controlled territory near craft space. We need them. My sisters married princess commanders, leaders of great houses. Alenda lifted her chin. And I receive a human? A species that barely discovered faster than light travel 2 centuries ago? Your sisters or not you, the Emperor's voice carried no cruelty, only fact. The marriage happens in 3 days. Prepare yourself. Alenda walked from the throne room without looking back. Her footsteps echoed against the polished floor. Servants bowed as she passed. None of them met her eyes. She was 127 cycles old, barely an adult by violent standards. Our people lived for 1,000 years, and she had already learned the truth that our elders knew well. Third daughters did not matter. Third daughters were useful only for leftover alliances. Third daughters married human ones. The court found this amusing. She heard them whisper behind their hands as she passed through the halls. Poor Alenda, given to the primitives. At least she will outlive him. 3 days later, her husband arrived. His transport was small and plain, no warship, no honor guard, just a single vessel that landed in the palace courtyard like an afterthought. Alenda stood with her attendants and watched the ramp descend. The man who walked down was not what she expected. She had prepared herself for someone foolish or loud, the way humans were shown in entertainment broadcasts. She expected crude jokes and strange customs, and a creature she would have to tolerate for a few decades until he died of old age. Instead, she saw a tall figure in simple gray clothes. He carried only a worn leather bag over one shoulder. His hair was dark, with threads of silver at the temples. His face was lined, but not unpleasant. He moved with a careful economy, each step measured and precise. But his eyes were what stopped her. They were gray, like storm clouds over an ocean, and they were tired, so deeply, impossibly tired. He looked at the crystal spires and the floating gardens and the gathered nobility of the violent empire, and his expression showed nothing. Not wonder, not ambition, not fear. Just exhaustion. Princess Alenda. He stopped before her and inclined his head. His voice was quiet, soft. I am Marcus Cole. Thank you for having me." The court tittered. What a meek little human. What a disappointing creature. Alenda studied him for a long moment. "Welcome to Seraphis Prime, Mr. Cole. Just Marcus, please." The wedding ceremony happened that evening. It was small and quick. None of Alenda's sisters attended. Her mother sent a recorded message that lasted 11 seconds. The emperor did not come at all. Marcus spoke his vows in a voice that barely carried past the altar, but there was something strange in the way he said the words. He spoke them like they mattered, like promises meant something to him. Alenda found herself curious despite her resentment. That night she waited in their shared chambers for the awkwardness that must follow, but Marcus simply took a blanket from the bed, arranged himself in a chair by the window, and closed his eyes. "The bed is large enough for both of us," she said. "You don't know me yet." He did not open his eyes. "I won't share your bed until you ask me to. Sleep well, princess." She did not know what to say, so she said nothing. In the darkness she watched him. The starlight caught the scars on his hands, old scars, many scars, too many for a simple man living a simple life. "What did you do before this?" she asked, "before the marriage arranged?" And "I was a soldier." His voice came soft through the shadows. "Now I'm retired." A soldier, she almost laughed. Human soldiers were considered barely more than militia by galactic standards. What kind of soldier? He was quiet for so long she thought he had fallen asleep. Then, the kind that doesn't exist anymore. Morning came and Marcus rose before the sun. Alenda awoke to find him gone from the chair. She discovered him on the balcony, moving through some kind of exercise routine. It was nothing like the graceful combat forms the Violent practiced. His movements were brutal, efficient, stripped of all beauty. Each motion looked designed to break something, or someone. He finished and turned to find her watching. Something flickered across his face, embarrassment perhaps, or something older. "Old habits," he said. "I apologize if I woke you." The days became weeks. Marcus asked for nothing. He attended the functions required of him, standing silent at Alenda's side while courtiers made jokes at his expense. He never responded. He never seemed to notice. But he noticed everything else. Alenda began to see it, the way his eyes tracked movement in crowds, the way he positioned himself near exits, the way he watched the palace guards trained with an expression she could not read. One evening, a senior guard demonstrated an ancient violent combat form. It was considered legendary. The other guards applauded. Marcus watched. He nodded politely, and in his eyes, Alenda saw something that looked almost like sadness, like a master watching children play with wooden swords. She told herself she was imagining things. A servant mentioned that Marcus had requested access to the palace archives. He spent hours there each night, reading. Alenda asked the archivists what he studied. Military history, specifically the Craft Dominion, specifically a war that ended 30 years ago. A war the Violent officially claimed they had won decisively. But Alenda had grown up in this palace. She knew how to read between official words. She knew that war had nearly destroyed them. She knew the craft simply stopped, retreated without explanation. She found Marcus in the archives that night, surrounded by holographic documents. "Why are you researching the craft?" she asked. He looked up at her. Those gray eyes held depth she could not measure. "Because they are the reason I am here, and because I want to understand what I'm protecting." "Protecting? You're a retired soldier from a primitive species. What could you possibly protect?" Marcus smiled. It was small and tired and held no happiness. "Sleep well, princess," he said. "We can talk more tomorrow." She left with more questions than answers, and somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that she had underestimated this quiet, tired man. She had no idea how right that voice was. 3 months passed, and Alenda had found herself doing something unexpected. She found herself watching her husband, not with suspicion, not anymore with curiosity. Marcus Cole was a puzzle. He asked for nothing. He complained about nothing. He accepted every insult from the court with silence and moved through the palace like a shadow that had learned to wear human skin. But shadows did not tend gardens. He had built a small one on their balcony. Earth vegetables, he told her. Tomatoes, peppers, things from his home world. He spent hours there each morning, hands deep in the soil, and it was the only time she ever saw peace on his face. "Why plants?" she asked one morning. He did not look up from his work. "Because they grow. Because I can help them grow. It's simple, clean." A pause. Some things should be simple. She did not understand, but she remembered. The palace AI flagged something strange in his medical readings. During thunderstorms, his heart rate spiked, his muscles tensed, his brain patterns showed intense activity, as if thunder meant incoming fire. He had nightmares. She heard him sometimes through the darkness. He never screamed, he never thrashed. He simply spoke names in a voice that cracked with grief. Sarah, Victor, Chen, Yuki. Names she did not know, people she had never met, ghosts that lived inside her husband's head. She never asked about them. She was not sure she wanted to know. One night she could not sleep. She found him sitting on the balcony, staring at the stars. "Who are you, Marcus Cole?" He turned to look at her. The starlight made his scars silver. "Someone who got tired of fighter." "What did you fight?" He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Everything." She sat beside him. They watched the stars together, and somewhere in that silence, something shifted between them. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. The next evening, a banquet filled the great hall. Nobles from across the empire gathered to celebrate some anniversary Alenda did not care about. She stood in a gown of silver light, while Marcus waited beside her in his simple human clothes. Lord Vera approached. He was young, wealthy, and cruel in the way that only those born to power could be. He had desired Elenda once. She had refused him. He had never forgotten. "Princess," his smile dripped with false warmth, "how wonderful to see you, and your pet." Elenda's hands tightened. "Lord Verify." "Tell me, human," Vera turned to Marcus with open contempt, "what is it like to be a charity case, to know your entire species exists only because greater civilizations allow it?" Marcus said nothing. He simply watched Verify with those gray eyes. "Does it spook?" Vera laughed and looked around at the watching crowd. "Perhaps it needs simpler words, smaller thoughts for its smaller brain." Elenda opened her mouth to respond, but Marcus moved first. He did not